Ladies and gentlemen, so we are multiplying these two expressions here. We have in the first parenthesis 2 times a power negative 2 times b power negative 3 all raised to the second power times 4 times a times b power negative 2 all raised to the power negative 2. So we're trying to multiply those two. So the first thing we got to do is what? Is to be able to remove the parentheses. And how do we remove the parentheses? By multiplying any power that we have with the base by what we have outside, the power that we have outside. So let's take the first one here. So for the first one, we have to recognize the invisible one as power here. Okay, remember that? Any base that has been a number or a variable that does not have any power always has an invisible one as a power, okay? So then we have 2, 1 times 2 is 2. All right? Then we have a, negative 2 times 2 is negative 4. Then we have b, negative 3 times 2 is negative 6, and then we are done for the first one. But we did not remove the parenthesis because we're going to be multiplying it with this one. That's the reason why we did not remove the parentheses, okay? And then times, so what's happening here is that this also has an invisible one, and that also an invisible one. So that would be what? 4, 1 times negative 2, negative 2. A, 1 times negative 2, negative 2, and then b, negative 2 times negative 2 is positive 4. All right? So this is what we have so far. Then we're going to go ahead and then multiply all the same base. So we're going to work with like terms, right? And then the numbers also, we're going to work with them, but we see how we go about it. All right? So remember that when you're multiplying the same base, you add the powers, right? So that means if you are doing xm times xn, it is xm plus n. Okay? So that's all we have. So let's go for it. So we have 2 to the second power, which is 2 by 2, which is 4. Okay? So it is 4. All right? Now, this number also, we got to work it out. But that's 4 power negative 2. Okay? So 4 power negative 2, before we can do anything, the best thing to do is to change it to be a positive power. How do we do that? By moving it down. So we move it down, so that becomes 4 power positive 2. Okay? Now how about a negative 4, and then a negative 2. Now we multiply on the same base. We said we got to do what? Add the powers. So that would be a negative 4, negative 2. Okay? How about b? So we have b negative 6 plus 4. Remember, we are adding the powers. Okay? So then we continue. So we go with the top expression. So we have 4. So this one will give us what? A, negative 6, B, negative 2. Negative 4, negative 2 is negative 6. You add, you keep the sign. And then when it comes to this one, you subtract, and then you keep the sign of the highest number. Subtract 4 from 6, which is 2. The sign of the highest number is negative. That's why we have negative 2. But in this case, we have both of them carry the same signs. So what we're going to do, we add and keep the sign. So that will give us negative 6. Then over. And at this point, we can already work out the 4 power 2, which is 4 times 2, right? 4 times 4, sorry. 4 times 4, which is 16. And the common mistake that people make is to do 4 times 2, which is 8, which is wrong. All right? So let's go for it. So this is what we have. All right? And then when we take it, what else can we work on? So at this point, we can reduce these two. Okay, because they have something in common. 4 can go into 4 one time. 4 can go into 16 4 times, correct? So this one is 4 goes into 4 one time, 4 goes into 16 4 times. So you can end up with, okay, so if you bring this one here, so that'll be equal to what? So for this one, that's a quarter, so that means 4 at the bottom, okay? And then what's happening here? A power negative 6, we cannot leave it as negative 6. It got to become positive, so we got to move it down. Okay? So it's 4, A positive 6. And then for b power negative 2, we also move it down. That's b positive 2. Okay? And then what left on the top is just 1 left on the top. And that's it, because there's nothing else left on the top but a 1. Ladies and gentlemen, we are finished with this problem. This is it. Okay? So you take it one at a time. It's quick and clean. It's not difficult, but it's just a matter of taking your time, understanding the steps, and then you find. Okay?